Welcome to the session on leadership theories. By now you've met me several times in the program already, but let me welcome you to this lecture in particular. I don't know if you remember, but I do work in the health policy and management track of the SHSPH, and this topic is one that is very close to my heart. In this session we will discuss whether leadership and management are different constructs. I will also share one practical leadership or management theory that you can use every day. In the second part of the lecture, we will look at the results of a large-scale research study regarding leadership, and we will explore what that means in practice. I would like to talk about both leadership and management together, as one cannot talk about one without the other. If you read the literature on the two, you will see substantive overlap in the descriptions and characteristics, despite the authors often trying to put them in columns or try to compare one to the other. For example, who would want a manager who does not have leadership qualities, and vice versa? But we all know that one can study to become a manager. But what about leaders? Are leaders born or are they made? Remember, you need to develop your own management philosophy. What is important is that you have an evidence-based approach. In other words, that you read about management and leadership theories and try them out in practice. Above all, do not rely on your personal opinions. There's a reason why there are advanced degrees in management. So let's start with this theory, which, as I said at the beginning, is practical, it's easy to remember, and will keep you sane when you work with other people. I might only refer to leadership or management in the rest of the lecture, as it is too cumbersome to say both together, but you know when I say one that I mean both. In this theory, they use two kinds of concepts. The one is task behavior and the other is relationship behavior. Now, task behavior is about content. So this relates to explaining duties and responsibilities of team members or staff members. Task behavior includes showing people how to do something, telling them what to do, and explaining when and where to do it. In other words, this is very prescriptive. On the other hand, relationship behavior is about people. And this relates to how the manager uses communication skills that include listening, encouraging, mediation, and providing personal support. In other words, guiding rather than prescribing. If we keep this in mind, then we can use task and relationship behavior to create 4 styles that every manager must be able to use according to the situation. This strategy implies situational awareness, understanding of the people that you work with, and an ability to shift from one style to another style with ease. And so there are 4 styles: showing, telling, explaining, coaching, sharing, supporting, or participating, and the last style is delegating. So let's look at them in turn. Let's first look at the graph itself. On the vertical axis is relationship behavior, and on the horizontal axis is task behavior. The size of the bubbles reflects the influence of the member of staff you are working with. For example, the largest bubble is delegation, where the person has the largest amount of influence, and the smallest is showing, where the person on the member of staff will obviously have the least amount of influence. So let's start on the bottom right-hand corner. This is the showing, telling, explaining style. Here the manager engages in high task behavior and low relationship behavior. This means that the manager decides what must be done and tells the staff member what to do. Let's move on to the top right-hand corner. This is the coaching style. Here the manager uses high task and high relationship behavior. The manager makes decisions on what must be done, but explains it to the staff member, who is encouraged to ask questions and to contribute. Let's move to the top left-hand corner. This is the sharing, supporting, participating style. In this style, this involves low task and high relationship behavior. Staff members share in decision-making and deciding on how the task will be executed. Finally, in the bottom left-hand corner, this is the delegating style. This involves low task and low relationship behavior. In other words, the staff member makes their own decisions within set parameters. Make a note of these 4 options, as we will need to remember them for the upcoming examples. I'll give you a moment to write the 4 down. Hope you've got it written down. Let's move on. I did say that this was a practical theory, so let's practice. We need to decide what kind of style to use with different kinds of staff members. So let's look at the grid to understand it. Here we can see ability and willingness, and the opposite, which is inability, or somebody is unable and or unwilling. You can imagine that ability is linked to tasks. In other words, is somebody able, has got the knowledge and skill to do something, and you will understand or see that willingness links to relationship. So the one is about task behavior and the other one about relationship behavior. So let's try. So for question 1, the top row, which style would you use for someone who is both unable and unwilling? You would love to fire them, but you can't. So what style would you use? So here is the answer. So for this kind of staff member, the safest style is the very prescriptive style of showing, telling, explaining with a lot of detail, expectations, deadlines, and so on. You can imagine that this style is exhausting for any manager. Remember that they are also unwilling, so probably hope that you will shift their work to someone else out of frustration. My suggestion to you is don't do it. Question 2. Which style would you use for someone who is unable but willing? This might, for example, be a new member of staff or a junior member, or even someone who has been with you for some time but is now taking on a new role. So for any staff member who is unable but willing, the style of choice is coaching. Remember that with this style, the manager uses high task and high relationship behavior. The manager makes decisions on what must be done, but explains it to the staff member who is encouraged to ask questions or contribute. You can see that in this scenario, the manager sees development potential, and that is why there's a high relationship behavior. Unfortunately, the high task behavior is needed because the person is still unable, still does not know how to do the task. Let's move on to question 3. Which style would you use for someone who is able but unwilling? Here the manager can try the sharing, supporting, participating style for the able but unwilling staff member. Here the staff member will share in the decision making and determining how the task will be executed. This approach might not work due to the unwillingness, and then the manager can revert to the prescriptive style of showing, telling and explaining. I must admit I find these particularly exhausting staff members, as they have the ability, unlike the first group, who are both unwilling but also unable. But if you understand this, then you will become less frustrated, as you'll understand why after years of service they still can't or won't learn and show initiative. They will also often pretend not to know something or also try to shift the work to someone else. And patience is really needed with this kind of staff member. I found that I can cope with this kind of staff member if I view them as someone who at the end of the day has had their brain wiped clean. So every day is a brand new day for them, and unfortunately for you as the manager. Question 4. Which style would you use for someone who is both able and willing? So here's the last one. So for somebody who's both able and willing, this kind of staff member is a dream staff member for any manager. Here delegation works well, as you can tell them what needs to be done, by when, the budget and so on, and they are able to make their own decisions within these set parameters. You can trust them to get the job done, and they will have few questions or decisions for you as the busy manager to make. Unfortunately, life experience shows that there are very few out there who are both able and willing. So we've come to the end of part 1. So in summary, all leaders and managers need to be able to work with others, who in many cases are less than ideal colleagues. Having and using a practical theory such as situational leadership is one of the tools that leaders and managers have at their disposal. Jean-Paul Sartre, a French philosopher, said that hell is other people. using leadership and management theories is one way to not only survive this hell, but flourish in the workplace. Please join me now for part 2.